So in this video lecture, I'm going to talk about such important component of business communication and culture shock. And I'm going to cover such topics as definition of culture shock, then the people who are exposed to culture shock, its signs and symptoms, then stages of culture shock, acculturation, reverse culture shock, and also say a couple of words about training and why it is important. So let us start with a definition of culture shock. So this is a part of the process of trying to adjust and adapt to a new culture. Specifically, culture shock is a mental state caused by the transition that occurs when you go from a familiar culture environment to an unfamiliar one and discover that your normative, established patterns of behavior are ineffective. Let us move on and take a look at the groups of people that are exposed to culture shock. Of course, first of all, these are tourists. They travel to different countries and experience different cultures. Then these are students who go abroad to study for one semester or for the whole academic year. Then, of course, we talk about business people who do businesses internationally, and for these purposes, they have to travel to different countries for shorter or longer periods of time. And then, of course, we talk about immigrants and refugees. However, since we are in the business communication course, I'm going to go a little bit into detail about and talk about business people. So first of all, a little definition of who actually business people are. Well, according to theories, business people are individuals who are usually sent by their employers to live and work temporarily where the organization is conducting business through branches, subsidiaries, and so on. So, however, business people, it's a much broader concept, and of course, it implies also business owners who travel to different countries to do business. Let's say that this is a business person that has been sent by his or her organization to another country. Then this person has to spend abroad a definite period of time, after which they have to go back home. It can be 3 months, 6 months, maybe 1 year, or maybe even longer. And of course, they travel to another country to accomplish clear work-related assignments. So this is their prior goal when they travel there. And it is important that such people can successfully interact with the local counterparts. That is why the knowledge of language is really important. These people will experience dislocation that is associated with exposure to unfamiliar cultural settings. And this is important to know that their career paths may be even affected by choosing or agreeing to undertake service abroad. When a business person goes to work to another country, it is very important to understand that the way in which business is conducted in the country of the person may significantly differ from location to location. That means that multinational companies, when deciding to send somebody abroad, they cannot simply transfer anybody to another country. So this has to be a person ready for dislocation, who has knowledge, who is culturally aware, and of course, who speaks English. And the person having come to another country to work in a company has to understand that many procedures will be different, and they are different, and they have to be modified to consider local customs and cultural values. What are the difficulties that business people can face when coming to another country? First of all, these are work-related difficulties. And these problems can stem from the complications that are associated with managing a culturally diverse workforce and the requirement to manage in a culturally appropriate manner. But of course, these can be not only work-related issues, these can also be non-work related. And such problems include the need to acquire the social skills that are necessary in order to survive and thrive in the local community and to be accepted by its members. Having come to another country, a person will definitely experience culture shock, which has the following signs and symptoms. We can start with the loss of perspective, where the person doesn't really understand why he is here and what is the next thing that he has to do. Then, in some cases, it can be over-concern for cleanness or suspicion, or, for example, the lack of motivation, or it can be even physical comfort if a person has moved to a very hot country, or on the contrary, it's a cold country. Then it can also be boredom, especially at the beginning when a business person doesn't yet know where to go and how to spend free time. Then it can be mental fatigue and also hypersensitivity. Another sign relates to irritability. And then we can also talk about frustration and also disorientation. If a person has started experiencing or has experiencing some of these symptoms, it means that a person is going through culture shock stages. And overall, culture shock appears to be a psychological and social process that progresses in stages that you can see now in the screen. It depends on person how long he or she will be experiencing culture shock, but in general it can last from 6 months up to 1 year. There are several models of culture shock, and most of them include 4 stages. So I'm going to concentrate on the model that you can see on your screen now. And the first stage of culture shock is called the tourist phase, and which is usually characterized by positive reaction to everything, including stress, to interest in culture, basically in euphoria, when a person likes everything. And then culture shock itself comes. When a person experiences confusion, frustration, fatigue, is stressed and anxious about everything, and can even experience depression. However, it doesn't last forever. And if a person lives in a country for 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 1 year, little by little, a person adjusts to a new country and learns to solve problems, starts having some intercultural relationship, has local friends or colleagues, and after some time, a person starts to appreciate the host country, and which as a result brings to acculturation, which means that a person has obtained a bicultural identity. So a person has 2 cultures inside him, his own and also the new one that he or she has acquired by living in a different country. It means that a person has learned to live in a new country, knows how to solve problems, has adapted to weather conditions, for example, food, and all kind of other issues. And as a result, it can bring him to a personal growth. So now I'd like to comment on acculturation a little bit more in detail. So this is a process when 2 different cultures group engage in continuous contact. It involves physical and psychological changes resulting from adaptation. Imagine a person has lived for example, in a hot country for 6 months or 7, 1 year, and his or her skin color has changed, or a person has gained some weight, for example, or on the contrary, lost weight, has changed hair color. Well, there can be many different changes, which tell us that a person has got adapted to a new life in a different country. Yeah. So overall, adapting to a new culture brings changes in diet, in housing, in the way how a person communicates, and many, many more, many other aspects of life. As a result of all these changes, people experience acculturative stress. What in general can affect adaptation and acculturation? Of course, first of all, this is communication. And I would like to highlight again the importance of language knowledge in this case. Now, of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be only English. It can be any other language, depending on where a person has come. But anyway, Personal communication, communication among colleagues or friends, this is something that can really help a person adapt to a new environment much faster. Then environment where a person lives, who and what surrounds him also play a very important role there. Then I would like to highlight such factors as preparedness. If a person is prepared and ready that he will be experiencing certain changes, then it will definitely be beneficial for him or for her. That will make the process of adaptation much easier. And of course, it depends on person. More introverted people can take it quite a long time to adapt, whereas for extroverted people, that will take much less time. Of course, such factors as host receptivity, ethnicity, predisposition, host conformity also have to be taken into account. So what are other factors that influence acculturation, successful acculturation? So it occurs on the condition of contact between the members of the host culture and the newcomers. And this is very important to understand that this contact has to be continuous and direct. If this is just occasional communication somewhere in a shop, for example, it will not really work. So the best is to have local friends, local acquaintances, or have good relationship with colleagues. Also, it is important why people communicate, be it friendship or maybe education or trade or business or any other purposes. So acculturation also depends on two processes, namely the degree to which a person approaches or avoids interaction with the host culture. So if a person doesn't really want to communicate with the locals and tries to avoid communication, and for example, learning a new language or being in environment with other people, with the locals, then it will not really work, or it will take a very long time. Also, the other process that influences acculturation relates to the degree to which the individual maintains his or her native culture. The next point that I would like to discuss, this is a reverse culture shock. As I have said at the beginning, a business person comes to another country for a certain period of time, let's say 1 year, but then a person has to be back. And this is a time when he can experience a reverse culture shock. What does it mean? First of all, this is a common problem within expat communities, and many people who have lived abroad but then for different reasons had to get back to their country, they have experienced culture shock, not even realizing that they are experiencing it. Yeah. So basically, this is the shock when a person comes back to his home country. Then a person may feel depressed, confused, stuck, and paralyzed because everybody around expects them to act the way they acted before they had left to another country and had spent a lot of time there. But nobody actually thinks that a person has lived in a different country for a long period of time, got used to a different diet, different housing, different communication, different weather, and then a person is back. And of course, it is clear that a person cannot act in the same way as previously. And sometimes it is even more difficult to experience and to deal with culture shock, reverse culture shock, than a traditional culture shock. Because, as I have said, most people do not expect it and are not ready for that. They are not aware that it can happen. Because everybody thinks that they have come to their homeland, so things should be okay. Things should go as usual. And when people who have lived abroad come back, they find it very difficult to reintegrate back into their society. And then it results in misunderstanding, confusion, depression, feeling homesick, or better to say host sick, or even bored and anxious. And However, it has to be kept in mind that reverse culture shock depends, and how strong it is, depends on the reasons why a person got back. So if the reason why a person has come back was quite serious, then probably reverse culture shock will not be that strong. On the contrary, if a person didn't really want to go back and wanted to stay there, but for example, according to the contract terms and conditions, a person had to get back, then most probably reverse culture shock will be quite hard. So basically, it is a proportional inverse relationship. The bigger the reason, the lighter the shock, and vice versa. As I said, a person can experience such thing as host sickness. What does it mean? This is a homesickness, but towards the host country where a person spent considerable amount of time. Because for some time, this host country became a person's home. And of course, now they miss it and they want to go back again. Yeah. And now their home is seen as different environment and they need time to get adapted again. Yeah. On the negative side, somebody can even develop hostility towards a home country. But anyway, after some time, these feelings, they disappear and a person gets back to normal life again. And finally, when a person decides to go to another country, for whatever reason it is, but is planning to stay there for some period of time, let's say more than 6 months, it is quite important to have some kind of culture training. So culture training implies, first of all, learning a language or realizing that language is necessary, and at least a person can start learning a language of the country where he or she is moving. So the second point relates to guarding against ethnocentrism. Then it would be quite beneficial to learn about the host culture, what is accepted, what is not accepted, what are the traditional holidays, maybe some important points about dress code, about the behavior, about some social occasions, and things like that. And finally, it is also quite important to maintain your own culture. So at this point, I would like to finish my talk about culture shock. Thank you.